So if you saw my earlier video about the Sephardic Jews, these are Jews that lived in like Spain, Portugal, France, whereas the Ashkenazi Jews lived in Germany and Europe or Ukraine, okay? Most people have heard of the Ashkenazi Jews. Yeah, okay. And then, well, the Sephardic Jews, people have said that the Kennedy family were Sephardic Jews. And I believe that's true because of a genetic disorder that is strictly pretty, I mean, that is very, high in the Sephardic Jew line. I'll get into that in a minute. However, when you ask AI will say, no, the Sephardic Jews go back to the Kennedys of the Scottish Irish side. Okay. And that even though there's a link with the Ireland Kennedys, the Scottish Irish Kennedys, which, yeah, they changed, how everybody changed the spelling of their name. So the Scottish Irish Kennedys were probably used to spell their name Kennedy with a C. They would go back to the Carrick family, but I thought the Kennedys went back to the Carrick. It's, you know what, so there's somewhat of a connection there, but not really. That's what AI says, but I think AI is wrong, and it's because of this autoimmune disorder. JFK hid how sick he was. But and so I put up a video earlier showing that he has this same autoimmune disorder that Sephardic Jews have, but they categorized him under type 2. No, he should have been categorized under type 1, at least from what I could quickly read about it. Type 2 is if you are only diagnosed with these autoimmune disorders later in life. No, Kennedy was sick even as a baby. As a child, Kennedy nearly died from scarlet fever and also had serious digestive problems, most likely spastic colitis or irritable bowel syndrome. That's huge right there, part of that genetic autoimmune disorder, which plagued him for the rest of his life. As a young man, he suffered urinary tract infections, ulcers, prostatitis. All of that stuff also falls under that, like yeast infections with the Sephardic line. And then his back problems. In fact, the reason when he got shot in the limo is he was wearing a back brace. He was always wearing a back brace, but they hid how sick he was. He was like just always just a mess. But a lot of the Kennedys were. JFK Jr. had Graves' disease. And then he was diagnosed with Addison's. They said, in his 30s or something like that, but he was sick all through since he was a baby. Like they thought he was going to die. So that would put him under the Sephardic Jews. But if you wanted to hide that you were a Jew, which many Jews did that, I mean, you kind of can understand it because of the history of the Holocaust and all. However, with the Sephardic Jews, they either fell, in their history anyway, under Muslim rule or Catholic rule. So if they were under Muslim rule, many of them took on a lot of the Muslim traditions, but they, stayed true to the Torah, apparently. If they fell under Catholic rule, the Catholics forced them to become Catholic Christian. Yeah, like any Christians should be forcing Jews to convert. Like, really? Like anybody should do that at all, but just seriously. But leave it to the Catholic Church. I mean, they were, behind the Inquisitions and everything. I mean, talk about just being the Roman Empire, as I always say. That's who they are. But the Kennedys, of course, were Catholic, but they hated. They didn't like Jews. In fact, Joe Kennedy Sr. and Jr. referred to Jews as Canadian geese because of their noses. They had horrible names, but they did not like the Jews, and Joe Sr. passed everything down to his boys. They weren't a good family. They were not a good family. They weren't. In fact, that's the reason the curse of the Kennedys, but their whole family line is sick, their whole family line dying left and right. I mean, and many people say, and I think that their family, you could say it's true, is that they're the offspring of Joe Kennedy has suffered because of his deeds. His deeds are horrible. And again, they were Nazi sympathizers claiming to be Irish Catholic. I'm not saying they weren't Irish, but given that Kennedy had like almost to the T the same autoimmune disorders and was sick, and that's very much in the Sephardic Jews in their genetic makeup, then I don't think it's a hard stretch why people have said that they're Sephardic Jews. Now, of course, they don't have to disclose that, but I mean, if you are the president, but then you have to say, like, why are they hating? Why were they standing with Hitler? But then Ireland did. Many in Ireland stood with Hitler. He's from Ireland. Like, you just see the pattern here, the problem. So I think the people that like want to say the Jews killed Kennedy, it's like, yeah. So I don't think that's the side you really. I'm not trying to say pick a Jew side here. Here's what I'll say: is like while all the special people, all the chosen people, all of God's chosen, are running around saying we're the special ones. No, we're the special ones. No, we have the right skin color that God, like, while all of you, I just hope that God, says, hey, he's cool with me. Like, I just hope God's accepting of me. Like, I don't need any specialness. I don't need any of that. Like, so while all of you worry about, like all your lineages and worry about we're the true chosen people, I'm just like, yeah, no, I just hope that God, lets me in. I worry about it. I mean, because, yeah, God, by the grace of God, I mean, he saved me over and over again, but, I don't understand why many times. So I just, hope, so I worry about it, I guess. I do. I worry. I cry to God about it. Like, I'm afraid. Well, everybody else runs around and worries about being chosen. We're the chosen people. Okay, I'm glad that that's all you have to worry about. Anyway, so here's a little background into the different sects of Jews, because there's black Jews, there's brown Jews, and there's white Jews. Why would there be so many different colored Jews? Because God said, I scattered them throughout the world. So here's a little bit here, African. So, but you could see the majority under European. The Greek Sephardic Jews, Turkish Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Syrian Jews, Italian Jews, Iraqi Jews, and Iranian Jews. That's what's interesting about that particular autoimmune disorder. It's seen in mainly Iraqi and Iranian Jews. And then you know the history there. So I'm not taking a side here, I'm just saying that all of this is just crazy. I mean, the Kennedys were not a good family. They were not a good family. That may seem like cruel of me to say that when no, they're crazy. They're crazy. All right, they just are. And I think that many of the people surrounding Trump, Tulsi included, they're just waiting to buy Trump's 4 years out, and Kennedy has his foot in the door, Tulsi, and I think Trump knows all that, and I think that all these people are screwed. I know everybody's happy with Tulsi, but there's just something more going on. I just think there is. So, and it seems that, you can see where the neo-Nazis like Candace and Tucker all stand, and they put JFK and the Kennedys on a pedestal, and it's like, yeah, anybody who does that is not right in the head, period, okay, and isn't honest. But that said, well, I think it's safe to say it's definitely biblical. all goes back to the Jews.